In life, we often find ourselves navigating the unpredictable waters of relationships, learning valuable lessons along the way. After enduring heartbreak and betrayal, I embarked on a journey of self-discovery that would forever change my perspective on love and happiness. It wasn't until I learned to embrace my worth and prioritize self-love that I began to attract healthier, more fulfilling connections into my life. This journey not only opened my heart to new possibilities, but also taught me the profound importance of trust, forgiveness, and resilience. As I moved forward, I realized that sometimes the greatest transformations come after the most challenging storms. This story is a true kaleidoscope of events, intricately woven together into a plot that's as captivating as it is complex. It has everything: intrigue, unexpected twists, humor, and even a dash of romance. So let's dive into this amazing world and discover what happens in a tale full of surprises and delightful revelations. In life, just about everyone you meet has something that makes them unique. For the privileged, it might be wealth, athletic prowess, intelligence, or even good looks. These special traits often propel their lives forward, giving them an edge over the competition. But for those less fortunate, their so-called gifts can sometimes serve as cautionary tales, warnings about the harsh realities of life. My friend Ralph is a prime example of someone with his own unique talents that set him apart from ordinary people. Ralph's specialties: mayhem and destruction. He's like a human wrecking ball. If there's a way to turn something sweet and wholesome into a catastrophic disaster, Ralph has probably done it, and he's got the scars to prove it. He's not just a troublemaker, he's the human embodiment of Wreck-It Ralph. But unlike the lovable cartoon character, Ralph's antics are the kind that make you wonder how he's still alive and not locked up in a maximum security prison. His nickname, Wrecker Ralph, is well-earned, as is the title of Demolition Man, for the havoc he causes by pushing the boundaries far beyond what society would consider acceptable. Despite Ralph's chaotic nature, he's the kind of guy you want on your side, as long as you can stay on his good side. I married Jenna 3 years after college, and she was everything I could have wanted on the surface: gorgeous, with an incredible figure that turned heads everywhere we went. It's no wonder I was so blinded by her looks that I didn't see her true nature. I knew when we got married that she wasn't exactly the warm and nurturing type, but in my superficial state of mind, I didn't care. She looked like a porn star, and more importantly, she could act like one too. It's a well-known fact that men often prioritize physical attraction over personality flaws, especially when a woman's allure is strong enough to cloud their judgment. This phenomenon is so common it's almost a cliché. Men let their primal instincts take over, often ignoring red flags until life's challenges force them to reevaluate their priorities. While passion might fuel romance and logic might sustain a marriage, physical desire can lead to unexpected expenses, like legal fees. During our courtship, Jenna met Ralph only once while he was home on leave. She also met some of my other friends, and they all got along fairly well. They were normal people, nothing too outrageous. But Ralph, he was a different story. I tried to warn Jenna about him, but she didn't really understand. To her, Ralph's escapades were just funny stories, something to laugh at without grasping that they were mostly true, with little embellishment. Stories are always funny when they're happening to someone else, but they take on a whole new meaning when you're caught in the middle of them. It stopped being funny when people began associating her with the human man-child who once got questioned by the police for trying to set mousetraps all over Chuck E. Cheese while yelling that he was going to kill the giant rat once and for all. Or the time he decided to start running a checkout counter at Walmart, even though he didn't actually work there. Most of his antics were stupid and harmless, but some went a bit too far. Fortunately, our hometown was like many others, and Ralph often got off easy. It's amazing what you can get away with when half your cousins are on the police force. Your uncle is the sheriff, and his wife, who also happens to be Ralph's godmother, is the judge. Even with all these family connections keeping him out of serious trouble, they warned him that his stunts were pushing the limits, and he needed to cut it out. When Ralph finally crossed the line, blast fishing in the reservoir while they were trying to restock it for the annual fishing derby, it really pissed off Annie Judge, the sheriff's wife and Ralph's godmother. That was her favorite date activity with her husband, and Ralph had ruined it. She gave him an ultimatum: either join the army or spend a year in county jail. Not wanting to waste a year of his life, Ralph chose to serve his country. With Ralph in the army, he was gone most of the time, so his interactions with me, and by extension Jenna, were minimal. We kept in touch through emails and video chats, and I'd send him care packages filled with random stuff depending on where he was stationed. Despite being a troublemaker, Ralph had decent grades in school, and with most of his escapades kept off his criminal record, he managed to enlist as an explosive ordnance disposal, EOD, technician. Because, nothing says great idea like giving someone with Ralph's tendencies the job of disarming explosives. Ralph somehow kept his more nefarious tendencies in check during basic training. It helped that he was just one random guy among many, and the drill sergeants were too busy dealing with the real idiots in the platoon to notice his antics. He even made it halfway through Advanced Individual Training, AIT, before his true nature got the best of him. One day, while on the explosives range, Ralph decided to build a C4 dildo, a joke he thought was hilarious. Unfortunately, the command sergeant major happened to be visiting the range that day. Ralph might have gotten away with it if he hadn't been bragging about how he modeled it after. As Ralph stood there, his instructors and the command sergeant major stared at him in a mix of disbelief and awe. It was at that very moment that his instructors finally realized that Ralph's personality wasn't exactly the best fit for the Explosive Ordnance Disposal, EOD, team. But they had a different idea about where he might be more at home: the combat engineers. While EOD techs needed to be mature, calculated, and precise when dealing with bombs, combat engineers were a different breed. They required about 80% of the intelligence, but with an added 70% of recklessness, which made the job more dangerous, yet, in a strange way, more fun. Ralph knew he had found his calling in the Army. When Ralph explained to his Advanced Individual Training, AIT, instructors why he had been kicked out of EOD school, they couldn't help but laugh. He had failed because he had spent his time building a makeshift model of female anatomy out of C4, just so he could brag about blowing it up. The next day, when he was instructed to add more explosives to his concrete charges on the range, a seasoned sergeant had told him, "Blow all of that up. It's a pain in the ass to turn back in." At that moment, Ralph knew he had found his home. Ralph would email me frequently, sharing wild stories about his antics and the pranks he pulled on his fellow soldiers. He accumulated a couple of Article 15s for his dumb stunts, but nothing severe enough to get him kicked out of the Army. He was having the time of his life, but after 4 years of service, Ralph decided to return home. While Ralph was off defending our freedom, I had been busy with my own life, getting married to Jenna, my dream girl. Our marriage started out typically, both of us focusing on our careers before thinking about kids. It was easier to travel and enjoy life when you didn't have to worry about finding sitters or packing endless diapers. Things between Jenna and me were good, until suddenly, they weren't. She began to act differently. At first, the changes were subtle, but as weeks passed, they became more pronounced. I tried talking to her, voicing my concerns about our marriage, but she brushed it off, insisting everything was fine. She continued with her new routines, leaving me feeling increasingly disconnected. Then, one day I came home from work to find her wedding ring on the kitchen table. I was devastated. My attempts to talk to her went nowhere. All I got were the usual cliches. It's not you, it's me, and I'm just going through some stuff. I knew she was lying, but I couldn't get her to admit the truth. I was finally served with divorce papers the afternoon we were supposed to celebrate Ralph's welcome home party. The papers cited irreconcilable differences as the reason for the split, and everything seemed to be an even split. I left the papers on the table and headed out to the party, trying to focus on welcoming my friend back home. My marriage was over, and I still didn't fully understand why. Ralph's return meant more to me than I was willing to admit. My life had fallen apart, and I hadn't figured out exactly why. I had strong suspicions of foul play on Jenna's part, but I tried to push those thoughts aside for the night. When I saw Ralph walk in, I gave him a big hug, and he immediately noticed something was off. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "It's nothing, don't worry about it. We're here to celebrate you coming home," I replied, handing him a drink. "Glad to have you home, buddy." He gave me a questioning look, but then grinned. "Yeah, right, it is good to be home." We had a few shots that night, and by a few, I mean we drank the bar dry. They even had to run to the liquor store around the corner for more. When the bar finally kicked us out, Ralph and I made our way to the only fine dining establishment open in the middle of the night, greasy, tasteless, but perfect. As the noise of the party faded and we sat in the quiet of the diner, Ralph finally asked, "What happened?" "I don't know," I sighed. "Everything was fine, then things got weird, and then she left. I got the divorce papers a few hours before your party, and I still don't know what went wrong." As always, Ralph cut straight to the point. "So, who is she?" "I don't know," I said, shrugging. After thinking for about 4 seconds, Ralph declared, "Okay, here's the plan. We mess up her life, and then we find out who he is and mess up his life too." For the first time in a while, I actually smiled. Is it that simple? Of course it is. She's gone. You can't go back to her after what she did. So why bother crying about it? Even if she walked back into your life, would you ever trust her again? No, I admitted. He wasn't wrong. She was gone, and it was time to burn that bridge and move on. Ralph got that stupid grin on his face, the one I'd seen 100 times before. "I'm on terminal leave for the next month, so I've got plenty of time to help with this. You take care of the lawyer. I'll take care of the rest." I laughed. "What the hell are you going to do?" "Don't worry about it, bro. I got this." We finished our greasy meal and called for a ride back to my house. By the time I woke up the next day, it was around 11 a.m. I could hear noises outside, like people talking in the driveway. When I looked out the window, I saw my driveway full of stuff that had been inside the house when I went to bed. People were rummaging through it, picking things up. I walked up to Ralph, sipping my coffee, and asked, "What are you doing?" The hand-drawn sign declaring a cheating sale gave me a pretty good clue. "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm making you some money." Thank you. But how do you know what's Jenna's stuff and what's mine?" "That's easy," Ralph said, not missing a beat. "If it's female crap, then I'm selling it because it's probably hers. And if it looks classy, I'm also selling it because it probably isn't yours, since you clearly have shitty taste, especially in women." I nodded my head. Fair points. There was no point in stopping him. I felt a little bad about some of the things getting sold, since some of them were family trinkets that Jenna had loved. But at this point, I didn't care. Ralph handed me some printed papers as he continued his impromptu yard sale, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like things might actually be okay. Sometimes people really underestimate how careless they can be. Take Jenna, for instance. She must have forgotten to log out of her Gmail account on the computer at our house before she left. Lucky for me, she didn't. That's how I found out she'd been seeing some guy named Tim, a coworker of hers. They had been exchanging flirty messages and some pretty explicit photos for a while. Looking back, I should have known better than to marry someone with a butterfly tattoo above her ass. When Ralph, my buddy, handed me the evidence of her cheating, I couldn't believe how easily he had dug it all up. I let out a tired, "I never knew," before realizing how foolish that sounded. "Of course you didn't," Ralph said, shaking his head. "You trusted her. But that's over now. Time to move on." I shrugged, trying to brush off the sting of betrayal, and focused on haggling over the price of Jenna's wedding dress. The woman I was selling it to looked thrilled when I countered her initial offer of $500 with a mere $20. I couldn't help but smirk at the thought of someday telling Jenna just how little her prized dress went for, a final screw you to the whole mess. As the garage sale wound down, I sent a quick text to a friend who works as a family practice attorney. He texted back, telling me to swing by his office so we could go over the divorce papers and get them signed. When I got home that afternoon, the house was almost empty, stripped of nearly everything except the bare essentials. It felt oddly liberating. Ralph was finishing up packing a large box labeled Jenna's stuff. He glanced up and smiled as I walked in. "How'd it go with the lawyer?" he asked. "Fine," I replied. "No issues. The agreement's fair, so I signed it. The courts wouldn't give me a better deal anyway. How about the sale? When did it end?" "About an hour ago," Ralph said, stacking another item into the box. "I had to run out for some supplies, but I'm done now. This is all that's left of her stuff." He handed me an envelope. "That's her cut from the sale. 24 65s. Make sure she gets her half." I glanced at the envelope, amused by how little was in it. "We should probably drop her stuff off at her parents' place so she doesn't have a reason to come back here," Ralph suggested. "That makes sense. Let's drop off her things and then grab something to eat." Knowing that Jenna's wedding dress alone had cost as much as a cheap used car, I realized Ralph probably hadn't gotten the best possible deal, but I didn't care. I was just glad to be rid of it all so I could move on with my life. I tried to lift the box, but Ralph grabbed it first, insisting that I drive since I knew where Jenna's parents lived. When we arrived at Jenna's parents' house, her father, Simon, opened the door and let us in. As we explained that we were there to drop off Jenna's belongings, Simon tried to apologize for her behavior. I cut him off before he could finish. "Did you know she was cheating on me?" I asked, my voice cold. Simon couldn't meet my eyes as he nodded, confirming what I already suspected. "Thanks for that, Simon," I said sarcastically. "Great daughter you raised." Ralph placed the box on the table, and I did a double-take at its contents. Alongside Jenna's clothes and personal items was an enormous dildo, complete with oversized hairy testicles, and some explicit pornography that certainly hadn't been part of my collection. There was also a red fire extinguisher of all things. Trying to keep a straight face, I told Simon to inform Jenna that I had signed the divorce papers and that my lawyer would be in touch with hers. As we left, Simon mumbled another apology, but I barely heard him. The absurdity of the situation was almost too much to handle. Once we were back in the truck, I couldn't hold back my laughter any longer. "How big is that dildo and what else did you throw in there?" I asked, still chuckling. "It's 12 inches long, 6 inches wide, and I'm not sure about the size of the hairy balls," Ralph replied with a mischievous grin. "But they were a nice touch, don't you think?" We had a great time at dinner that night, with Ralph regaling me with stories from his past. I'd heard some of them before, but hearing them directly from him made them twice as funny. It's nearly impossible to stay in a bad mood when Ralph is around. The fact that Jenna had made my life miserable before she left just made it easier to start moving on. When we got back to the house, I checked the home phone, a relic from the past that Jenna and I had kept because it was cheaper to bundle with our internet provider. To my amusement, there was a blistering voicemail from Jenna. Her rant was barely understandable, filled with screaming about cell phones, huge dildos, hairy balls, and her father thinking she was pregnant. I checked my cell phone and saw no messages from her. Then, I noticed Ralph's grin. I checked my phone again and realized Jenna's contact had been blocked. "You were busy today?" I said, raising an eyebrow. Ralph grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and handed me one, taking a sip from his. "Sorry, the best I could do on short notice was draw some lines with a marker. It was a gamble with the pregnancy test. I figured Jenna's mother would spot the fake right away, but I hoped her father would see it first and not notice the difference. Looks like it worked out." Ralph settled into the guest room, and just like that, we became roommates. Him adjusting to civilian life, and me adjusting to single life. With the divorce underway, Jenna no longer bothered to hide her relationship with Tim, the guy from her work. I had met him once or twice at work events, but I never thought much of him. Now I was glad I didn't. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I realized that this was just the beginning of my new life, free from the drama and deceit that Jenna had brought into it. With Ralph by my side, I knew I was going to be just fine. As I strolled through downtown to grab a coffee, a flyer on the ground caught my eye. I picked it up from the pavement, slipped it into my pocket, and continued on my way, intending to check it out later. That evening, as I walked through the front door, I handed the flyer to Ralph. It was obviously his handiwork, a clever little piece that made him smile with pride. But Ralph played dumb, feigning innocence. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he said, looking over the flyer with an exaggerated air of confusion. The flyer depicted Jenna and her new flame, Tim, in a rather compromising position. While the naughty bits were covered, the implication was crystal clear. The flyer listed both of their names and boldly stated that Tim was not Jenna's husband, a detail that made the whole situation even more scandalous. The distribution had started at the office and had quickly spread. I asked Ralph how many he had distributed. He casually replied, "A few thousand." "How did you find the time to put all those up?" I asked, incredulous. "Easy," Ralph said with a grin. "I found a bunch of teenagers hanging out and paid them $20 each to plaster them everywhere. Even if some ended up in the trash, the damage was done. Isn't that what being a teenager is all about? Causing a little trouble?" Later that evening, as I played the messages on the house phone, one from Jenna came on. Her voice was a mix of fury and humiliation, something about everyone at work thinking she was a mess. She mentioned something about a homeless guy with a sign, which made me shoot Ralph a questioning look. Ralph, ever prepared, handed me a beer and then showed me a video on his phone. The video featured a man, who appeared to be homeless, twirling a sign that read, "A cheater lives here." Ralph took a sip of his beer and explained, "That guy isn't homeless. He's a buddy of mine from the VFW. His wife left him while he was deployed in Afghanistan, so he was more than happy to help expose a cheater, even if it wasn't his own." I watched the video, sipping my beer, as the man twirled the sign with what could only be described as gleeful enthusiasm. Meanwhile, the divorce continued to inch its way through the legal system. Jenna's attorney contacted mine, complaining about the so-called harassment. My lawyer calmly responded that we had no idea what they were talking about, and added that if Jenna wanted to slander me, we'd change the grounds for the divorce to adultery. That threat seemed to do the trick, and Jenna backed off. A few days later, another message from Jenna arrived, this one filled with even more drama. It was like a twisted game, trying to guess what Ralph had done based on her increasingly hysterical tone. Ralph, with his usual timing, handed me another beer and started another video. This time, the scene involved Juan, the homeless guy, and his girlfriend Maria, who had taken to ringing a bell in public places. Apparently, Maria's ex-husband had left her while she was pregnant, and she saw this as a form of therapeutic revenge. In the video, Maria's voice rang out as she enthusiastically chimed her bell. Juan, dressed in his homeless garb, looked like a modern-day High Sparrow from Game of Thrones, while Tim and Jenna stood there looking utterly mortified. "Where did this happen?" I asked. Ralph chuckled. "Red Lobster." I took another sip of my beer and inquired, "So, no one got naked?" Ralph smacked the table and laughed. "Damn it, I knew I forgot something. Guess we'll have to hit up the local gentlemen's club to make up for it." "Your logic is flawless, my friend," I said, grabbing my keys. We headed out, and before long, we were at the club, attempting to restore Ralph's honor after his so-called nudity mistake. As we watched the dancers, I asked him, "When is this all going to end?" "When the divorce is final," Ralph replied, his eyes fixed on a dancer with the stage name Ebony. She smiled at Ralph as we tucked our cash into her outfit, while Ralph mused about the lack of sex in the champagne room. Unfortunately, Ralph's antics got him into trouble, and after a brief incident with Ebony, the bouncers made it clear that Ralph was banned from the club for a month. As we left, Ralph declared, "I think I'm in love." His sudden raving about mothballs left me confused, but I just couldn't keep up with him anymore. With a triumphant grin, he said, "Did you know that red bell peppers start smelling like mothballs if they sit too long? The internet is a weird and wonderful place." "Indeed it is, my friend," I replied, finishing my beer. Then I added, "You seem to be letting Tim off pretty easy. I'm not doubting your genius, just making an observation." "Maybe," Ralph conceded, "but he's had to change his phone number 3 times this month. Seems he's the most eligible bachelor on Grindr, Scruff, Jacked, Hornet, and even FarmersOnly.com. "Farmers Only? You're kidding me," I laughed. Hey, even gay farmers need love, Ralph said, handing me another beer. A week later, I got a surprise visit from Sheriff's uncle. I'd always gotten along well with his family, so I invited him in and offered him a beer. As he took a sip, he asked, "Where's my idiot nephew today?" "He took off to Mexico with his new girlfriend last Friday," I replied. "Interesting. So he's not in town?" the sheriff inquired. "Nope, he's been gone for days. Why, what's up?" Just then, the phone rang. The sheriff gave me a look, but I shrugged it off. "I'm just saving evidence of my ex's mental instability," I said, as the answering machine recorded yet another ranting message about brown grass and cheating. The sheriff took another swallow of his beer and said, "Looks like Jenna's work is having some landscaping issues. They swore it was Ralph, but it seems like he has a solid alibi. Why don't you call him and we can confirm his whereabouts?" I dialed Ralph's number and a familiar voice answered. "Hi, Ralph's busy right now. Can I help you with something?" I had never done anything like this before, but deep down, I hoped it would provide some clarity. I prayed that my gut instincts were wrong. As I swiped through Ella's photo gallery, my heart sank at a picture of her with an unfamiliar man, his lips brushing against her cheek. Confusion flooded my mind. What on earth was happening? If she was happy with me, why would she be doing this? Driven by curiosity, I delved into her messages and stumbled upon a chat with a guy named Jacob. Their exchanges were filled with explicit and intimate details, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt betrayed and devastated, shocked to find myself in this nightmare. The person I loved most had deceived me, and now I was left grappling with a whirlwind of emotions, fury and heartbreak intertwined. I knew I had to confront her, but first, I decided to sleep on it. When morning arrived, Ella appeared anxious, her stress palpable. She must have noticed that her phone had been moved from its usual spot on the nightstand. "Did you go through my phone?" she asked, irritation in her voice. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. "Stop pretending. I know you've been cheating on me." To my astonishment, Ella broke down, admitting that she had cheated out of boredom. Jacob was also married, and she revealed they had fallen in love, his wife completely oblivious to their affair. Each revelation felt like a weight crushing my chest. My world was collapsing around me, and in that moment, I felt a responsibility not just to myself, but also to Jacob's unsuspecting wife, Mandy. She deserved to know the truth. I resolved to reach out to Mandy, knowing it wouldn't be easy. I found Jacob's social media and contacted her, asking if we could meet privately. Initially hesitant, she agreed when I hinted that I had important information about her husband. We arranged to meet at a quiet cafe, and as I began to share the painful truth, her face transformed through shock, disbelief, and finally heartbreak. It was clear that this revelation was devastating for her, but she expressed gratitude for the honesty. I hoped she would find the strength to confront Jacob and carve a better path for herself. Meanwhile, I felt the urge for a little revenge. I wanted Jacob to understand the pain he had caused both me and Mandy. So I created a fake social media profile and started flirting with him, pretending to be a single woman seeking excitement. Jacob predictably couldn't resist the temptation. As we chatted more frequently, I couldn't help but imagine how Ella would react if she learned that her so-called true love was also cheating. I played my role flawlessly, leading Jacob to believe there was a real chance for something between us. When he seemed eager to meet in person, I decided it was time to drop the bombshell. I invited Mandy to join me, ensuring Ella would be there as well. When we all gathered, the expressions on Ella's and Jacob's faces were priceless. Mandy wasted no time, declaring she was done with Jacob and was filing for divorce. I didn't hold back either. I told Ella that her beloved Jacob had come to meet me under false pretenses. I presented Jacob with divorce papers, and his attempts to explain fell flat. I had no interest in his excuses. I wanted him to feel the pain he had inflicted on others. After that confrontation, I cut all ties and walked away, feeling a complicated mix of satisfaction and sorrow. Ella, now desperate, cried and begged me to stay, professing her love. I didn't believe her for a second. I told her she had 1 week to pack her things and leave my house. It felt empowering to stand up for myself and finally prioritize my well-being. In the weeks that followed, the pain slowly began to fade. I focused on rebuilding my life, leaning on the support of friends and family. I rediscovered the person I was before the betrayal, starting the healing process. I also took steps to finalize my divorce from Ella. It was an emotionally challenging journey, but I knew it was the right choice for my happiness. As for Mandy, we developed a strong friendship, bonded by our shared experiences. We found comfort in each other's company, and both of us were determined to move on from our painful pasts and focus on our personal growth. In the months that followed, I threw myself into new hobbies, career opportunities, and social activities. I surrounded myself with positivity and took time for self-reflection. Through this journey, I learned a vital lesson. My worth was not defined by anyone else's actions. I was ready to embrace a brighter future, one filled with hope and new beginnings. The moans that followed, "Oh, baby, right there, so good," were a clear indication of what Ralph was up to at that moment. I could hardly believe my ears when the sheriff took the phone and asked, "Where's Ralph right now, honey?" Jenna replied casually, "He's inside me right now." I couldn't help but spray my beer across the room in shock. The sheriff burst into laughter, and with a grin, he asked, "Are you two in Mexico or back here in town?" Ralph grabbed the phone, and despite the background sounds of skin slapping against skin, he said, "We're in Cancun, Uncle Sly, just enjoying the local sights. I'll email you my flight itinerary later." He paused, then added, "I've got to go. I'm a little busy right now. Bye." The sheriff handed the phone back to me, finished his beer, and walked out chuckling to himself, mumbling something about the divorce being finalized. I was now a free man, and for Jenna, this marked the end of Ralph's shenanigans. It was a beautiful Sunday, and we were gearing up for the first game of the afternoon. I sank into the couch and tossed a beer to Ralph, saying, "Thanks, buddy. I appreciate your help. It's time for everyone to move on." But Ralph shook his head, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Not quite yet. One more thing to go. We have to end on a high note." "Can you top what you've already done?" I asked, half joking. Placing his hand over his heart in mock offense, he exclaimed, "Good sir, you wound me with your lack of faith." It wasn't his words that sent a shiver down my spine. It was the wicked grin spreading across his face. "How bad is this going to be?" I asked. Ralph glanced at his watch, chuckling. "You'll see." Just then, the phone rang. Some of the screaming was clear, while other bits of the call were just a jumble of words. Church, grandmother, Elvis, strap-on, threesome, whole congregation. I looked at Ralph, bewildered. "What did you do?" With a grin, he said, "Want to watch?" He opened a video on his iPad, and I immediately recognized the church where Jenna and I had exchanged vows. The minister was mid-sermon when suddenly a man stepped forward, clearly confused but determined. He proclaimed that he needed to confess his sins, standing boldly at the altar. The man began to declare that he had sinned in the eyes of the Lord and wanted to atone for his wicked ways. To my shock, he confessed to fornicating with a woman in the congregation named Jenna. I struggled to wrap my head around the absurdity of it all as I watched a 4-foot-tall dwarf dressed as Elvis announce his infidelity with my now ex-wife. The scene took an even more bizarre turn. As I continued to watch in disbelief, Elvis walked over to Jenna, took her hand, and began to talk about the intimate moments they shared using various toys, all while "Love Me Tender" played in the background. He expressed his conflicting feelings due to her marital status, but emphasized his willingness to do anything for her love. Then, with the divorce finalized, he proposed, presenting a ring that looked absurdly large in his tiny hands. "Be my full-size Priscilla, Jenna. I love you," he declared. Jenna was stunned. Her grandmother fainted, her father looked mortified, and her mother broke down in tears, causing utter chaos. I sat there, speechless, unsure how to react as I stared at the unfolding drama, while Ralph reclined on the couch, an amused grin plastered across his face. Moments later, the front door swung open and someone entered the kitchen. I heard the fridge open, and suddenly, the 4-foot Elvis impersonator appeared beside me on the couch, casually watching the game. He cracked open a beer, glanced at me, winked, and said, "Hail to the king, baby." Ciao. As for my own revenge, I decided to take the high road. For the past year, I had been dating Jenna's former best friend, Kara. Jenna had done a good job of keeping her secret under wraps, especially since Kara's ex-husband had been caught cheating with a bartender who was 30 years older than him. Jenna knew better than to share her own infidelities with Kara. There was something immensely satisfying about hearing Jenna's reaction when Kara told her she couldn't go out because she was spending the night with her boyfriend. It would be even sweeter if Jenna knew that Kara's new best friend, Ebony, was also spending the night with Ralph. Ebony, a stunning fitness instructor, had invited Kara to her gym, and I made sure to compliment her on her incredible workouts at every opportunity. Tonight was special for both of us. Ralph intended to propose to Ebony later that evening when they got back to her place, just as I planned to propose to Kara. I fully intended to hand-deliver wedding invitations to Jenna and Ralph, and I knew just the perfect dwarf to deliver them. This story is an exhilarating journey through tangled intrigues, filled with unexpected twists and incredible discoveries. It keeps you on the edge of your seat, making you wonder what surprises lie ahead. Now, on to story 2. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I've been happily married to my amazing wife, Ella, who's 25 for about 3 years. We're the kind of couple that knows each other so well we finish each other's sentences and laugh at each other's silly jokes. Life has been pretty great. Or at least, that's what I believed. Recently, though, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off with Ella. She started staying late at work more often and became secretive about her phone. It might sound odd, but I had this gut feeling that something wasn't quite right. After weeks of trying to dismiss those troubling thoughts, I decided to confront the situation head-on. It was nerve-wracking, but I knew I needed to find the truth, even if it meant facing some painful realities. Late one night, while she was asleep, I made the decision to check her phone and go through her messages and apps. My heart raced as I knew I was stepping into potentially dangerous territory. I had never done anything like this before, but deep down I hoped it would bring me some clarity. More than anything, I prayed my gut instincts were wrong. As I swiped through Ella's photo gallery, my heart sank when I stumbled upon a picture of her laughing and leaning into a man I didn't recognize, his lips brushing her cheek. Confusion washed over me. What on earth was going on? If she was happy with me, why would she be sharing moments like this with someone else? My curiosity got the better of me, and I dug deeper into her messages. That's when I discovered an unsettling chat with a guy named Jacob. The messages detailed their secret meetups at hotels and were filled with explicit, intimate exchanges that felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I was blindsided by a painful revelation. My world felt as if it were crumbling around me. The person I loved most had betrayed me, and I was left reeling, grappling with a whirlwind of emotions, fury, heartbreak, and disbelief. I knew I needed to confront her, but I decided to sleep on it first, hoping that maybe things wouldn't seem so bleak in the morning. However, when morning arrived, Ella looked stressed and anxious. She must have sensed something was off, especially since her phone was no longer in its usual spot on the nightstand. When she asked me if I had gone through her phone, irritation crept into her voice. With a calm expression, I told her to stop pretending. I already knew about her affair. To my shock, Ella broke down in tears. She admitted she had cheated because she felt bored with her life. She revealed that Jacob was also married and that they had fallen in love. The weight of her words felt unbearable. It was as if the ground beneath me was shifting, and my heart sank further with each detail she shared. In that moment, a new feeling emerged: responsibility. I realized not only did I owe it to myself to address this betrayal, but I also owed it to Jacob's unsuspecting wife, Mandy. She deserved to know the truth about her husband's infidelity. I steeled myself for the difficult conversation ahead. I found Jacob's social media profile while digging through the messages, and after some hesitation, I reached out to Mandy, requesting a private meeting. Initially reluctant, she agreed once I hinted that I had crucial information about her husband. We decided to meet at a quiet cafe, and as I began to share the truth with Mandy, I could see her emotions shift dramatically, from shock to disbelief, and finally to heartbreak. Despite her pain, Mandy appreciated the truth. She deserved to know what was happening behind her back, and I hoped she would find the strength to confront Jacob and forge a better path for herself. Seeking revenge can be a risky endeavor, but I felt Jacob needed to experience the pain he had inflicted on both of us. So I devised a plan. I created a fake social media account, portraying myself as a single woman in search of excitement and adventure. Sure enough, Jacob fell right into the trap, and we began chatting regularly. I couldn't help but imagine how Ella would react when she found out that her so-called true love was also cheating on her. I played my role perfectly, leading Jacob to believe that there was a real chance for something more between us. It was clear he was eager to meet. That's when I decided to drop the bombshell. I asked Mandy to join me for the confrontation, and I made sure Ella would be there too. The moment we all gathered, the expressions on Ella's and Jacob's faces were priceless. Mandy didn't hold back. She told Jacob she was divorcing him and was done with their relationship. At the same time, I confronted Ella with the truth, revealing that Jacob had come to meet me, thinking I was just another woman he could hook up with. To heighten the drama, I handed Jacob divorce papers, and I could see the shock and guilt wash over his face as he struggled to explain himself. But I wasn't interested in his excuses. I wanted him to truly feel the pain he had caused others. After that explosive confrontation, I cut off all contact and walked away, feeling a mix of satisfaction and sorrow. Ella, now visibly shaken, started to cry and begged me to stay, claiming she still loved me. But I couldn't trust her words any longer. I told her she had a week to pack her things and leave my house. It felt empowering to take that stand. I finally felt like I was reclaiming my life. In the weeks that followed, the pain gradually subsided, and I focused on rebuilding my life with the support of friends and family. I rediscovered the person I was before the betrayal and began to heal. I took the necessary steps to finalize my divorce from Ella. It was an emotionally challenging process, but I knew it was the right choice for my well-being and happiness. As for Mandy, we developed a strong bond of friendship through our shared experiences. We connected in a unique way, finding solace in each other's company. Mandy decided to move on from her painful chapter and focus on her growth and happiness. In the months that followed, I immersed myself in new hobbies, career opportunities, and social activities. I surrounded myself with positive influences and took the time to rediscover what truly made me happy. Through self-reflection and personal growth, I realized that my worth wasn't defined by anyone else's actions. I was ready to embrace a future filled with possibilities, free from the shadows of the past. Through my journey, I learned to embrace and value myself in ways I never thought possible. This newfound self-respect transformed my life, allowing me to attract healthier relationships. Eventually, I met someone new, a kind, understanding, and loyal person who appreciated me for who I truly was. He treated me with the love and respect I had always deserved. We took our time getting to know each other, letting trust and affection blossom naturally. This relationship taught me that there is always hope for love after heartbreak. Sometimes, the right person enters your life when you least expect it, bringing with them a sense of peace and happiness that had been missing before. As for Ella and Jacob, I heard through mutual friends that their relationship didn't last long after the confrontation. The trust they once shared had been irrevocably shattered, and they ultimately decided to go their separate ways. Watching their story unfold was a reminder of how fragile relationships can be, especially when built on shaky foundations. Instead of dwelling on revenge or bitterness, I made a conscious choice to focus on my own growth and happiness. The experience with Ella and Jacob taught me invaluable lessons about trust, forgiveness, and the importance of prioritizing self-love. I realized that holding on to anger and seeking retribution only weighs you down. It doesn't solve problems or mend relationships. In my opinion, revenge and deceit are not constructive paths to take. True healing comes from openness, honest communication, and a willingness to forgive. Those qualities are essential for overcoming difficulties and moving forward. Though my journey toward self-healing and new relationships was not easy, I found the strength to embrace my experiences and learn from them. I discovered that every setback could be a stepping stone to something better. As I continued to grow, I became more aware of what I wanted in life and in love, qualities that would lead me to more fulfilling connections in the future. Life taught me that while heartache is painful, it can also be a powerful catalyst for change. I emerged stronger, more resilient, and ready to welcome whatever life had in store for me next.